Hey, 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 hey. Hey, 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 hey.
Secret House.
Secret House Against. Yo, Pigeon Dust beats in the background. Shout out to my man Pigeon Dust. Hey, did you know he did a beat for KDI's album?
No, I did not.
Fucking, what was it? Heartbreaks album he did? Anyways, yeah, I found out that he had worked with Pigeon Dust, that Kiki had worked with Pigeon Dust, and I was really surprised about that. But yeah, fucking Secret House Against the World, Tokyo Bass, album discussions, conversations, reviews, if you will. Today, it's me and Jet. Please like, subscribe, hit the bell for notification. Secret House Against 15 on that Patreon. Yeah, today we're discussing Serengeti AJAI 2. It is 10 tracks, 28 minutes. Now, I guess this album dropped as a physical-only release 5 or 6 months ago, but it finally made it streaming maybe 2 weeks ago. So that's why we're on it. I have no idea what number project this is for Serengeti. Probably has 50 projects at this point.
I believe he also charged a large amount of money for the physical copy, just to he did it like Mark Homme style, where it's like, oh, if you really really want this, you're gonna give me my dues for it.
Okay.
So it was one that not a lot of people heard until it's released on streaming recently.
I definitely didn't. I didn't hear about it. When it popped up, I was like, wonderful. I always love a new Serengeti project. I'm a big fan of the guy. To speak more about that, let's tell you guys how we know about Serengeti. How about you, Jet?
You put me on to We Saw Mad Turtles last year, and it was one of my favorite albums of the year.
Oh, shit. I try to do more research on that We Saw Mad Turtles album, and there's nothing about it. I didn't even see Serengeti post about it. It's just fucking
just
there.
Exists.
But I've been a long time fan of Serengeti. I want to say that I started listening to him maybe in 2006. He was one of the kind of emerging artists out of Chicago at the time. This is when Open Mike Eagle, Open Mike Eagle, Hannibal Buress, and Serengeti are good friends from college. Right. And so Serengeti eventually, he put out Noodle Arm Whimsy. I should put up his album, his discography. But Serengeti is kind of this prolific artist. I think of him as one of the modern jazzmen. He has a very distinct style and approach to his music. He's the one that put me on to calling shit whimsy, because a lot of his shit is very whimsical, and I think that's a big part of his artistry. But he's put out, I want to say that he's probably got about 50 albums, 50 projects that he's worked on. Now, I think one of his biggest accomplishments is this Kenny Dennis character that he created. Have you heard of Kenny Dennis?
No. I know that, was it Kenny Siegel, produced the first AJAI, so I wasn't sure if the Kenny put AJAI on was a reference to him, or if that was
Kenny. I think that is referring to Kenny Dennis, this character that he created that is basically a really Chicago guy who's into fucking brats, beer, bulls, bears, and it's a caricature of this dude. But the world that he fleshed out with this Kenny Dennis character is so expansive. He created all this backstory for it. Has multiple Kenny Dennis albums. He has albums that people have he's collaborated with somebody to do an album as Kenny Dennis's wife Jules. He has he created a 90s rap album as the character Kenny Dennis doing the album, and it's just it's so richly dense. I don't think that there is another character in hip-hop who is so built to be real as fucking, I don't know, Rick Ross. He's so tremendous with it. And the Kenny Dennis character is so strange, and it's he's performed at Bulls games and halftime shows and shit, and he's really kind of known as being a huge champion of Chicago. And it's funny and it's kind of childish, but it's also got some really cool fucking rapping. He's done projects with Y from Anzacon. He's done projects with Open Mike Eagle. The Kavanaugh is also. You haven't heard the Kavanaugh?
No.
Bro,
no, yes.
You've got to hear that.
Yeah.
It's tremendous. It's a really incredible album, and it highlights more of his rapping ability. I think that when it comes to Serengeti, he's an artist for me that I find it difficult to put people onto, because it's like it's more so about like the body of work and the artistry, like Bus Driver, than it is like any single project to me. I think most people are kind of like, ugh.
And I don't mean this as a criticism of this record. Sorry, let's get on the album itself. But I'm a little bit lost on this one because I didn't listen to AJAI 1.
Neither did I.
And I don't know.
I mean, I did, but I don't remember it.
And I didn't know until 90 seconds ago who Kenny was.
Okay.
Or who his wife is. And certainly, and I'm not from Chicago. I've never been to Chicago. I'm not from the US. I've only spent a couple weeks there as a teenager. So contextually, like, I was a little bit lost, and I feel like I'm reviewing a sequel to a movie that I didn't see the original of.
Ah, okay.
And, people have opinions on The Matrix Reloaded, but if you just watched it by itself, you might be like, what the hell is going on?
Sure.
And yeah, felt a little lost in this one.
So you were listening to it thinking like, this is the guy, like he's the hype beast. He's talking about. Oh, he's like he's like a nerdier West Side Gun,
something like that.
What I mean? Interesting.
So I was a little lost on this one.
Okay.
So I'm glad that you're able to provide some context here.
Okay.
And apologies to our listeners for not doing the homework.
No, I probably should have spoke to you more about it. But to get into the album, so the first one was produced by Kenny Siegel.
Yes.
And this one is produced by a child actor. And also Andrew Broder did the brilliant cuts. So the brilliant rap, brilliant
Be Brilliant jingle.
And then the tanning bed shit, right? Shout out to Andrew Broder. He's fucking dope. Used to be the head of Fog.
Right.
Ether Teeth, 10th Avenue Freak Out. He also he produced one of the cuts on Arm & Hammer's album. Helped produce that. But he's really dope. Fucking tremendous white boy. Like he was a Fog was part of that, like, oh man, they gave all the fucking indie white kids like drum machines, and it was a fucking vibe. Like they were killing it with music back then, right? I'm a big fan. I fuck with him tremendously.
Good era for artists with Panda in their name.
Word. And man, like, so this album is kind of Serengeti's newest mindchild, AJAI 1. It's basically about this like hype beast Chicago rap human, right? And so I couldn't tell you the full themes of the last album, AJAI 1, because I didn't listen to it much. There's like 2 songs on there that when I listened to it, I didn't listen to it like it was a concept album.
In depth, yeah.
Yeah, and so I kind of, it passed me by, and I kind of just didn't get with it for whatever reason. And a lot of Serengeti's music is like that for me. Sometimes I just don't care for it, but I do appreciate the art. Now, this album, it's very strange, and I guess if you don't know what's going on, you're not aware that he is rapping from the perspective of this dude who is clearly going through a lot of problems based upon his hype beast consumption.
Right.
Like the entire album is really kind of it to me. It's it's full of beat switches. It's random, seemingly switching between like first person rhymes, third person rhymes, second person type of experiences. It's almost like id, ego, super ego in a lot of the type of exchanges it has. It's full of existential dread, regret, despair, the exhilaration of being consumed by consumerism, and to me it's a really grim and dark look into how consumerism can quickly turn us into alienated from human experiences. And this album itself he's talking about like the Be Brilliant jingle, and I think that those 3 jingles are somehow hearkening to like and this is going to get pretentious for me because I'm talking about this in terms of like projecting into the ideological components of consumerism within, late stage capitalism. So, but I think that Serengeti is smart enough and the type of artist that is highly intentional with every single approach on this album. So these Be Brilliant jingles, which it really is a jingle. It's like, it sounds like a 1980s after school special type of thing.
Like a local car dealership.
Right. Yeah.
Jingle, something like that.
Exactly that. It's like a sitcom intro or something. And he has these 3 moments, and I think it speaks to kind of like the progression of consumerism, like the jingle, and then it goes, finally it's like this, the Be Brilliant rap is like some 80s rap shit that is Kenny Dennis rapping on the song. So it's like before AJAI, there's this Kenny Dennis character within Chicago that is part of it. And the Be Brilliant tanning bed is like some kind of, it's like a beautiful, relaxing, inexpansive fucking type of glow that he's sitting under. But the whole album, man, it starts off with him, you know, he has all these lines that are just strange stackings of like products.
Yes.
Right? Like fucking Oshkosh, Bagosh, Lemon Line, Two-Tone, Gollywops, Gollywomp, Ballyobs, Odd Cops Outside the Ops. Like he's doing like a West Side Gunning but or Mach-Hommy with fashion shit, but overload.
And that was, so as someone who, you know, again, sorry, didn't do the homework, didn't really understand what he was talking about on this record, one thing that really immediately struck me was a couple months ago, I had a very, very bad experience with a psychedelic drug that at the time was legal in Japan and is no longer legal in Japan. Good. And had a very bad experience with it. And at one point, after I'd kind of become aware of what was happening to me, I was lying in bed and my mind was just absolutely like racing. And it was all things that were like connected in some capacity, like they sounded similar or there was something visually similar, and it was just racing at me like 1,000 miles per hour, like faster than I could like articulate with my mouth. Or it was just like Bart Simpson, Ferrari F50, Batman, Bartman, you know, just bam, just hitting me over and over again. And that was the mood I got from this record. Was you know, this kind of almost psychedelic experience.
It is, and that's why I made a point to mention that it kind of switches these perspectives, because like I'll put the album on in a minute so you guys can kind of get a whiff of it, but it's constantly changing. Like a lot of the songs teeter between like, oh, I gotta get it. Oh no, I'm having deep problems with my wife. I need to fucking sell some shoes so I can take some pressure off her. Oh, check it out, I'm fly. And then it's like, yeah, I bet you he thinks he looks fly, and it's very kind of schizophrenic in that way. And I think that intentionally highlights the kind of struggle that people have as like this competition in status society. And it's almost like a requiem for a dream in a way.
Yes.
Where his addiction, this album is basically about addiction.
Yes.
When you get down to it, and it's tearing his life apart. At the end of the album, it's like him being happy about shit, and then him being in Walmart, him being happy about shit, him being by himself at the bread aisle, kicked out from his wife's house, him being happy about shit, jumped and having his shit stolen. Like so much of the album is just, it really, to me, this is one of the more focused albums that I've heard from Serengeti in a while.
A lot more lucid than like we saw Mad Turtles, for example. With that record, it's a bunch of like sonic textures, and there are lyrics, but like you'd have to like look them up to understand what is being said. And this record, while it is, as someone who's not kind of familiar with the Serengeti extended universe, as it were, but you can, it's very clear to understand, you know, what is going on, you know, verbally and lyrically. Great production as well. Shouts out to Child Actor. Big fan.
Bro, the production on this is actually what makes this a more fun listen for me. I guess I'm like, I like Kenny Siegel a lot, and he's really well, but I like the way that this Child Actor production works with what Serengeti's trying to get across. Like, there's these, like this song, Wake Up Ajay, he talks about like him being in this plain apartment, and it kind of is like post the breakup from his wife, which you kind of realize later in the story. And he's like comparing, it's more like wake up Ajay, like you got enough of this, you got enough of that. But soon thereafter, it's like you get a beat switch, and it's back to him being like needing. I got enough jeans. I got
enough robes, got enough vests, got enough belts, got enough else. Just don't need it.
This album is not so much like a music listen as it is like
a cinematic experience. And that was definitely something that I think Child Actor deserve a huge amount of credit for. They've always been really, really good at setting the scene. You know, same on like the Shrapnel, same on the Lucid on I Told Bessie. You know, on like the More Mother that they were on a few years ago, you know, you really get that almost soundtrack kind of sensation that the production really provides like an ambience to which Serengeti is kind of barring out over and providing a narrative.
In France, in the country,
it's very disorientating. This album, it does feel psychedelic to me. It feels schizophrenic to me. And I don't know if I've ever really kind of heard anybody parse out the problems with consumerism that are so rampant in, you know, popular culture. Like, as a person that is a consumer myself, you know, like, I love sneakers. Jet will tell you.
There are like 9 pairs of Jordans in this room in different colorways.
I blame it on my wife, and but it's definitely something that a lot of people grapple with. And so, like, for me, you know, I started thinking a lot about what was going on in this album. And, you know, have you seen the show Sneakerheads? This album is like that, but the dire dark side of it. And, you know, consumption itself is not the problem. I've got a bunch of notes here if I could just go right
Get off, because I don't have much to contribute to this episode. Sorry, guys.
Yeah, you know, I should have talked to you more about it on Wednesday, because it was something that I wanted to talk about. And you and I, being Marxists, of course, we're going to have very strong critiques about consumption and consumerism. And, you know, as I was thinking about it, I recall, you know, Trotsky said that Marx couldn't conceive of a world with automobiles and radios and moving pictures. And a socialist society without enjoyment of these goods is kind of unthinkable. And then you have, like, the, you know, later in the 1900s, the Frankfurt School and his acolyte condemned these things as generating, like, artificial desire in place of genuine goods, things that you need, right? But in 2023, we're so deeply neoliberally subjectized. I drink a lot, like, subjugated, and it's just like, you know, this is like false consciousness that we need these goods, but they're not. And so it really, you know, modern leftists kind of conceive of a restraint of capitalism to limit its growth, and that's supposed to be like a bold vision of revolution. And that's important, but capitalism and consumption aren't like easy bedfellows and shouldn't be conflated as synonymous. Like, simply put, people want to live in a more comfortable lifestyle, and you know, that's just the nature of things, and these things are ultimately pretty dope in ways. And
there's a certain irony to it. Sorry, not to cut you off. Like, you know, if you look at, like, the Frankfurt School, you look at Adorno, you know, Adorno hated jazz. Right?
That's his worst take.
Which is definitely his worst take. Yeah. But
you're right.
Jazz is almost the backdrop to this, you know, criticism. You know, this album, I hesitate to call it jazzy, because from a music theory perspective, it is not jazzy, although it does incorporate jazz samples, like the current beat you're hearing in the background. But jazz is now kind of, you know, even though it is an institution and it is, you know, you go to Juilliard or you go to Berkeley, you learn jazz, but at the same time, jazz is such a...
It breaks time signatures.
Right.
It changes time signatures, and the experience of jazz is not 4/4 and easy to beat out. Like, it can be more.
Even like your Kenny G's are not, or your Hiromi Uehara's are not, like, popular culture co-opting jazz in the way that American Idiot co-ops punk.
Yeah.
It's something very, very different. Right. And you definitely feel that in this album.
Indeed. You know, for me, it's like one of the things that's important when often as a leftist, you know, you'll run into somebody who doesn't really hasn't done any reading on any type of socialist literature, communist literature, or, you know, any type of theory. They probably haven't even read about capitalism. So you'll also see people who have read these things who are very quick to kind of pathologize consumerism as a mental illness. Now, of course, there's something to be said about that. The critique of consumerism as, like, existentially deficient, alienating, dehumanizing, they're fundamentally valid when you have a very strong understanding of the idea that it is fetishization of, like, these non-essential forms. And that's good and all. To me, this album, I wouldn't say it's like a wake-up call for me in my fucking sneaker purchasing bullshit, but...
And I don't know if it's a good, accessible enough to function as a wake-up call.
Yeah.
To anyone, really.
But, you know, in a way, that's what I think is so beautiful about this album, is that it's like, man, this is so insightful. I don't know if I've heard anybody have this. This is like the hard conversation to have with somebody who is spiraling down this path of, you know, some of the songs are like, he talks about, like, I want to, like, get that heart, meaning the like, you know what I mean? Get that attention. and it's just like he humanizes it in such a way that I never have seen before. And for me, that's the reason this album really stands out as like an incredible piece of work, as more or less as a kind of a non-music, kind of like the Shook World album, as a kind of non-music. You know, non-music is what plays in hospitals. You know, you don't go to the hospital and hear Drake and shit. It's like not music happening in hospitals. And this joint, to me, it was just like hearing it. It's like you go through this kind of fluctuation that is very much associated with like this kind of desire. Like I want it. Oh, I got it. But the desire is still lacking. The kind of the psychic damage of free markets. You know what I mean? Like if you've read any like Lacan or even Zizek and talk about ideology and desire and so on, this album should be able to at least spark kind of some type of emotional resonance for you, even if you're not going through those things. Like we all have wants and we all have desires and we all have these master signifiers that we're never able to fully capture, and once we grab them, they're fleeting again. This album captures that kind of frenetic grasping at passing objects that I've never heard. I fucking recommend this to, who's that one, the rap critic guy who's like the rap professor or whatever, motherfucker cat?
Oh yeah, I know.
He's like, he's good. I don't really
criticisms of
I don't really pay attention to him too much, but I've seen a few of his works, and he does have some interesting critiques, and I would like to see him talk about it. I could write a paper about this, but that's not what we do. I'm a fucking regular dude that likes to like say fuck during reviews and also, you know, talk about like whatever, because I'm not an academic. I'm just a motherfucker that read some shit like you and I. Like, but this album for me, man.
I'm like a lapsed academic.
Well, I mean, like, I'm not even a college graduate, bro.
Right.
Like, you know what I mean? So, yeah, this album really fucking, and on top of that, bro, like, he's got some really dope like lines in here that are just really dope.
The styles on this record are immaculate. Like, I'm really into how this record sounds. I just wasn't able to grasp too much on my first couple of listens because I didn't have the context and I didn't have the time to go back and listen to the first one and figure out like who this character was.
Like he be talking about like Eves Edwards and shit. You know what I mean? Like, he goes off like the rapping on this is interesting enough, like to like
foot in all worlds. Talk that, keep it real talk, but wear a $9,000 Gandhi-inspired blood-stained loincloth dreamed up by a fool at Hermes to help bathe the poor in Calcutta. Slippery slope to be wearing capes and having accents on private parties in abandoned LaSalle banks.
Yeah, bro. I fucking like it. I don't know if I kind of got too pretentious, but I'm like that.
I recommend this album to my friends who are like really into like library music and field recording. I had a coworker who I worked with in a shopping center a few years ago, and at 9 p.m. they, you know, in Japan there's always like the Get Out music that starts playing, where it's like, all right, this song's playing, like make your way to the door, get out if you're still in here. And he loved that song, and it was kind of beautiful in like a very haunting, creepy way. And walking through this like deserted mall at the end, while everyone's pulling the shutters down and getting ready to go home for the night, it was kind of evocative of that for me.
Who would you recommend this to?
My friends who are into that kind of shit.
That's it. I mean, like in terms of. Okay.
In terms of music listeners,
I don't know why I just had a brain lapse right there.
Oh no, you're good.
I was trying to think of who the fuck I was going to recommend.
People who like Rory.
Okay.
I think, I imagine that Spade would have said Rory, would have evoked Rory if he was here today. That makes it sound like he passed away. He's around. He's fine.
Comment, Spade.
Comment, Spade. Let everyone know you're alive when you're around. It's. I mean, you know, in terms of its poetry and its kind of sonic footprint, to an extent, you should know what you're going to get if you're a fan of Child Actor.
Yeah.
You know, they've been a workhorse in this kind of genre of, you know, weird alternative hip hop that we talk about a lot on this show. You know, if you're a fan of, you know, your Backwoods Productions or your Open Mike Eagles or whatever, like you kind of know, you should probably know what to anticipate sonically from this record.
Word.
Yeah.
But
listen to AJAI one first, because you'll be less lost than I was.
I feel like I would recommend this to people that read a couple different type of books. If you're into like Todd McGowan, Psychic Costs of Free Markets, if you have like a cursory understanding of like Lacanian psychology, I would recommend this to fans of like Star Trek that watch Star Trek and pretend that, you know, McCoy, Spock, and Kirk are like the ego, superego.
Yeah.
Those type of things are fun when it comes to this album. But mostly if I was to recommend Serengeti to somebody, I would recommend like the Car album, CAR. I would recommend I would recommend Noodle Arm Whimsy, and maybe Dennehy. Yeah, because the like those are fun and kind of more conventional. Like Dennehy is a great summer joint. But man, he's incredible at writing. If you listen to fucking Time and Materials, The Kavanaugh, him and Open Mike Eagle, some of the verses he has on that, he fucking smokes like Hemlock Ernst. Open Mike, he smokes Bus Driver on some of these. Like he's a real jazz man musician. Like he's got a style and he's fucking tremendous at it. If you're there to hear, if you want to hear like jazz, this is the guy. Like him mixing with other people creates it's a different potion, and him and Child Actor are dope. I'm rambling because I'm still a little crazy from last night, but man, fuck, I can't say enough about Serengeti. Ultimately, he'd probably be on my top 20 favorite MCs. Personal, not some objective like they're good, but
the best
he does
rapping,
he does some fucking incredible shit. I'm gonna play some stuff for Jet as soon as this shit goes off. Yeah, but yeah. All right, man. Secret House.
Secret Host.
Shit.
Like, comment, subscribe, Patreon, Secret House Against 15.
That's right. I love you guys.
Getty King, spaghetti string snip, taboo fell out a bit. Excuse me, ma'am, I see your ham. I hope the guys don't curse me, damn. I like it like I found a bike, the prettiest thing I seen tonight. Prettiest thing I saw in years, including those two volunteers that couch surfed and loved dessert. Wore those sweetest gathered skirts, even prettier than them. Prettier than a precious gem, pretty as an onion stem. On weekends at the MGM, I can't see why your strap is snipped. I'm not complaining, not a bit, I'm not. Floyd attacked and destroyed a convoy that was carrying LaCroix and also little kids' toys. I made a mistake, I also poisoned an artificial lake. It wasn't my best moment, so at night the king lies awake, Floyd. My father's middle name too, I hated it growing up, so I said my second name was Lou. There's pressure having a realm in my old forest of elm. Plus when you make a mistake, you felt overwhelmed. I was feeling sorta sick, my excuse, I made a mess of it. I'm not complaining, not a bit, I'm not complaining, not a bit, I'm not.